Dr. Marko, firstly, it's such an honor to be chatting with you. We're just recording after Red Bull Racing has secured their 100th Grand Prix win in Formula One, and you've seen all of them in person. Firstly, before we begin with chatting about the story of Red Bull, I just want to know your take on this because 100 is a lot. 100, did you ever imagine when you started out that this number would be even closely possible?
No, you know, when the decision was done and Mr. Mateschitz decided to buy Jaguar Racing, which was a not very successful midfield team, so I told him there is a possibility to buy this team. We were sponsoring Clean at Jaguar, and through the negotiation, it was obvious that the whole team is for sale. So I said, let's try do it. Maybe we win a Grand Prix once. That was the approach how we went into it.
But actually, I'm so curious about the whole thing because not many people know this, Dr. Marco. But you started the Red Bull Driver Academy 6 years before the Red Bull Racing team actually started in the first place. So, what's that whole story? And how did you actually end up meeting Dietrich in the first place? And how did this whole discussion come about?
You know, Mr. Mateschitz is from the same area in Styria, very near to the Red Bull ring, so there was a connection, and I don't know exactly how it happened, but motor racing is expensive, so Mr. Mateschitz said, let's do something for the young people that they can afford this sport. And that's why we started the Red Bull junior team, and it was mainly to support young drivers. But when first Red Bull bought Jaguar and a little bit later Minardi, the approach was a different one. We said, okay, now we have to have a goal, and the goal is we must find drivers who can win a Grand Prix. Not only is that we support them to win a Grand Prix. To win a Grand Prix is a criteria. To win a championship, you never can predict. It's depending on the whole package. How good is your chassis? How good is the engine? How strong is the driver? But that was the aim. So we changed the approach. We were going for more performance, and if the people didn't perform, we had to stop our support. And yeah, and then it was melting together. Junior team, Formula One, everything came together. It was, of course, perfect with Minardi or in the early days, Toro Rosso. The aim was to give young drivers a chance because in a top team, you can't go in a top team without any experience. And there was Franz Tost who did this job very well. And looking to the past, we have now Vettel with 4 championships, we have Max with 2, hopefully a third is pretty soon following. So the whole system was a success, and it was not only on the driver side. We also started with a new approach. We said we would like to do it different. And one thing was Christian Horner, who didn't have any experience as a F1 team principal, but he was very successful in Formula 3000. And from there, we built it from scratch, I would say.
Actually, it's so interesting. You've scouted drivers and the team principal as well. Very interesting. On that front, actually, I want to start out at the very beginning because with RSM Marco, right? That's after you got done with your racing career. I read in the middle that you managed some top drivers like Gerhard Berger and Karl Wedlinger, and then you started your junior team. But was that how Mr. Mateschitz approached you? Like, hey, I have an idea. Why don't we do something?
It must have been something like that. I can't remember exactly. He was in Graz, where I live, and he stayed in the Schlossberg Hotel, and we had the presentation of Karl Wendlinger's F3 outfit, and there the discussion started. Yes, but and then in the end it was why couldn't we do something together?
But Dr. Margo, on that front, you must have looked at it and been like, "Wait, why do you want to do this?" Because again, it's so absurd, right? If you tell it to any outsider that there is an energy drink brand that sponsored drivers and then had their own team and won so many championships, it just sounds absurd. But did it ever click to you that hey, this is not as weird as it sounds?
It's a little bit weird, yes, I agree, but we have to come further back. St. Marijn in Mürztal, that's a place where Mateschitz lived, is very near to a hill climb race, which is called Alpe race. And in the early 60s, Jochen Rindt, you know, the world champion, the first Austrian world champion, raced and Mateschitz watched this race. And there were also little ice races, you know, in winter when the fields were frozen and ski ergs with spikes and things like that. So there was already a passion which was in Mr. Mateschitz mind, or however you say. And when his company was getting successful, he was, of course, always a fan of extreme sports, and so motor racing was a clear, good opportunity to place the product placements. And then with a lot of passion, but the main thing, we both had the passion for motor racing. And that's went through all the development. It was always a passion which was driving him, was driving me, and we wanted success, but in a not success under all circumstances, success which is built up and which, yeah, which also was fun, you know, because I remember the first championship with Vettel, it was such a surprise in Abu Dhabi. He was not the favorite. Favorite was Alonso, and the, the man with the second most points was Webber. So, and it wasn't decided till the very last lap if we win or not. The same happened to 12. And all this emotion, that's part of our DNA.
I love it, and so many of those wins achieved by Red Bull have also been by your graduates, drivers that you've brought up. But on that, I wanted to talk about your team as well, RSM Marco. Why did you set it up in the first place? And there were so many great drivers that you competed with over there as well. Like in 1989, your first season, you folks raced against Michael Schumacher in Formula 3000. It is quite a name to have.
Yeah, yeah, and the year before we won it, even with the Alfa Romeo right engine. So I also did go, was complete opposite to the others, you know. They were using Opel engines and Renault chassis, which were more advanced. But yeah, the Austrian seems to like it to do it our own way. So I think I started the team because of the Austrian drivers. They didn't have the budget the, you need for a top team. So I said, okay, let's do it ourselves. And it started with Berger, it started with Müller, and it started with Wendlinger. So, yeah, it's so long ago, I don't know all these details anymore. But it all helped to get this success because it was experience, very good experience. So all this knowledge was brought into the Red Bull projects.
But I love this one thing about the Austrian motorsport community that firstly everyone's so on the outside it seems very united. But Dr. Marko, I want to know something very interesting from you. There's you, there's Jochen Rindt, there's Niki Lauda, there's Toto Wolff, and countless other Austrian people who have been involved in motorsports so well and have also had a great inclination towards business. So what's this combination like? What's there in the air of Austria that creates so many great examples of great businessmen and great motorsport people? Is there something like? Is it must be the food, the wind, or something
No,
like
no,
that?
it's. I think we are a very small country. You know, 8 million people. We don't have our own automotive industry, and people think Austria is romantic and Mozart and Schubert, things like that. But we are, so people have to work harder. They have to be more creative to achieve something. And there is this, I mean, coming back to Jochen Rindt, I was in school with him in a boarding school, and he fortunately had the financial backing to go into international racing. But at that time, from Austria to go to England, that was like a journey to the moon. You know, our English was not very good, and we didn't have only local races, like I mentioned before, hill climbing. And when he was winning internationally, especially in the beginning F2 in Austria, all of a sudden, oh, we are a small country and we are so proud and we can achieve internationally. And then one came to the other. We built a circuit, the Red Bull Ring. At that time it was the Österreich Ring. Yeah, one came to the other. And as I said, passionate people who like the challenge, and if they see a possibility, they will fight for it.
I love it. And since then there's been so many great drivers as well. But I want to talk more about Austrians in the present sense in a little bit later. But I really want to talk about Red Bull at the moment because the whole setup, right, from being a driver sponsor to a team sponsor to then an academy to then also finally a team themselves. Did it seem like a logical step along the way, or was it just surprise after surprise that hey, we can now do this as well? And all along, were you confused that, okay, how much independence will I get? Because at the end of the day, it definitely is a company that deals in something else, right? So did you feel like, okay, I'll get total independence to do whatever I want to with this program?
No, as I said in the beginning, when Jaguar was bought, the boss said, let's do it differently. So in the beginning, yes, we got established driver like David Coulthard and then Mark Webber, but it was clear we wanted to have the success with our young drivers, which we found and which we are bringing through the ranks up to Formula One. We had a lot of independence from the boss. It was just, I explained what roughly we are doing, and it was yes or no within minutes. There was no discussion. Yeah, and or like to sign Verstappen for this very long-term contract in 2022, I think it was. I said the boss, there is a chance. Verstappen, who is our biggest outfit, our important thing, also as a motivator for the whole team and so on. Said, how much does it cost? It was not cheap. Said, yes, we do it. So that was no big business plan meeting or things. Of course, when the company became bigger and bigger, there had been yearly business plan meetings and so on, where the general line was fixed. But if something extra happened or something, some speciality or some opportunity came up, it was always like that, also with driver decisions and so on. So we had a lot of, and I think that's part of the success of Red Bull Racing and AlphaTauri, that both teams were acting very independently. And fortunately, with the new management now, we have the same freedom, and it helped a lot to achieve the success we have.
On that, I wanted to ask a very interesting question. What's the longest meeting you've had with Mr. Mateschitz, and what was it about? Because if Verstappen signing for what is it, 6 years can be such a short discussion, I wonder what the long meetings are about.
The longest meeting was when there was the plan to cooperate with Porsche. And it was a brilliant idea from marketing. Both brands are really big, and from marketing point of view, it would have been. And unfortunately, it didn't work out, and that had been the longest discussions I have had with him.
And it looked like it went on for a long time as well, right? We had the news, the rumors at least, announced so early, and then the news coming out later. How I mean, it must have taken so much of the team's mental willpower, right? Because you're fighting for a world championship on one side, and then coordinating so many different deals, and then how draining is it to do all of that?
as long as you have the main focus on winning, then it's clear, and the rest is, yeah, it's daily business, I would say, or sometimes a little bit more than daily business. But the main focus always was on winning, on winning. And that was also during, I mean, let's come to the 7 tough years we had when the new engine regulations came. We had one with Vettel, I don't know, 13 races or something like that. It was a dominant season. Renault promised us, because of their experience with turbocharger, a competitive engine. And then the first test in, I remember in Yarama, it was a disaster. And Mercedes was so far ahead. It was reliability, horsepower. And in these years, to keep the team together, to keep the motivation, knowing you can't win under normal circumstances because the engine is so much better. But we suffered a lot, but we overcame it, fortunately.
I want to ask you about that for a second because on the outside, Dr. Marco, it looks like you just managed to drive an academy. But clearly, as you're explaining, there's a lot of your involvement in the strategic decisions as well about what engine partners to go for, driver negotiations, and also keeping the team together. But how involved are you on these fronts on a day to day basis? And what mostly takes up your time in your current role?
I mean, I was the connection between Red Bull Racing and Austria, and the main decisions were done here in Austria. And yeah, I was quite heavily involved in all that.
Okay. Yep. Uh, great to hear the story, and we could actually just go deeper into the Red Bull Driver Academy, Dr. Marco. Uh, as you know, driver academies are of extreme interest to me as well, given my background of having done it at a very small scale at the Force India F1 team. But who was the first ever driver that you actually signed up to the junior team? We know Christian Klein was the first one to make it to Formula One, but who was the first driver you actually signed up with a lot of hope?
Antonio Liuzzi, he won the European F3000 Championship, and he obviously had a lot of speed, a lot of talent, but yeah, in the end, it didn't work out. Speed alone, talent alone is not enough. You have to be a hard worker. You have to commit yourself 110%. So we had a lot of talents, and I have to say, even though I would say 98% of the drivers which didn't make it to Formula One, they are now in categories like sports car, Formula E, or GT, and they do what they love and they earn money. And most of them are earning more money what they could earn in a normal job, daily job. So even though not everybody or only a few made it to Formula One, it was a very good education and it was the start for a career which they couldn't have done without Red Bull. And basically it's called Red Bull Junior Team. There's just a Red Bull Academy because now so many others are establishing academies, so we also have this name now.
It's interesting you mentioned with Antonio Luizzi because I worked with him fairly closely at the Force India F1 team, which was the last team he sort of drove for after leaving the Red Bull stables. But, there is this whole mystique around the Red Bull Academy that I really love, which is simply down to what is the Helmut Marko formula of choosing a young driver into the program. And like I said at the start of the show, Jehan Daruwala, Dennis Hauger, I know a few drivers who have worked very closely with you, continue to do so. But what's the Helmut Marko formula of finding a young, really talented driver into the program?
First of all, I'm watching all the junior categories, the races. We also watch go kart, and then real thing which makes a difference is a discussion where I sit personally with the driver 20, 30 minutes. The only exception was Max. With him I was talking more than 1 hour or an hour and a half, I can't remember exactly. So, but the personal meeting is the most important thing.
And when you meet a driver personally, you are of course understanding the attitude and the personality and the motivations, etc. But you come from an era of racing where instinct was very high. Now everything is data driven. You have telemetry, you have transponder data, you have so many variables you can play with, right? So how do you assess talent? Is it a mix of instinct and data? Like, I'm trying to understand. Yes, you've met a driver, you spoke to several drivers, you meet them for an hour or even 30 minutes, but what's that hook there? You're like, that's it, that's the driver I would love to have on the program.
I mean, you mentioned all the data. We have a lot of drivers who are really good on the simulator, but reality is a different thing. But the main thing is, if there is, let's go, 3 drivers are going into a corner, and there's normally only one who will be out of the corner first. And this, if you have this instinct is on top of everything with the speed. You can be on simulator data, and then there's one disadvantage for the drivers. You mentioned my old days or the old days. We used, if we crashed, the throttle stuck, the tire went off. All these excuses are not anymore. So, they are, how do I say, everything you see. You see also it is on the throttle or not on the throttle in the fast corners and so on. But if something is not optimal, then the driver makes a difference, and he has to grow. It's theoretically not possible, but you have to drive 110% and things like that. And that's in the personality, or in the young days you don't have that, and it not always develops as we would like it or as we thought it would be. But the main thing is the speed, the instinct, and the approach how you go into racing.
Very, very insightful. And can I pull out an example? Say we pick Dennis Hauger, the Norwegian Formula 2 driver. How much of a close contact do you keep with MP Motorsport to understand Dennis's performance? Have his data sheets and telemetry. Like, do you track driver progression session by session, race by race, or do you just say, Dennis, you got to finish on top in the championship and then leave him to do it? I'm just trying to sort of go layer after layer to understand how you are assessing talent, Dr. Marko.
Once we decide to support, for example, Dennis is always a second season man. It was in F3 like that. So, of course, I watch the races. We have in Milton Keynes Rocky, who analyzes everything from the database. Every driver has to send me a report about the race. And sometimes you wonder if it was the same race I watched, I get reports from the teams, so it's quite a spread of informations, and where you have to get the right conclusions. Or Hauger Baku is leading the race, and then there's a big crash for the second and third guys. I forgot who it was, and I was wondering where is Hauger. But he was so far ahead with his crash, you couldn't see it on TV. And so we watch the performance of the teams, which is in F2, for example, going up and down. But with Hauger, of course, there are personal discussions as well. I explained to him it's not enough what he's doing at the moment. And and then one stage you have to decide you continue or not. But he was fighting very strange, most of his career always with Jack Doohan. They were always close together. And now I thought Doohan would be a champion contender, like I thought Hauger would be. Doohan is even more struggling in a very good team than Hauger is. So yeah, you have to compare the whole picture and see. And there's sometimes development which you can't foresee, and then comes the pressure. And pressure is something you have to handle. And the more you can handle the pressure, the better you will be in the upper formulas. It's not people sometimes think, oh, you just have to get to the Formula One. Sometimes it's carrying your helmet, the other one is carrying your bag. It's not. You as a driver yourself, you have to carry a lot of.
This is so interesting, and I can keep digging, but I can sense that there is a magic formula that you bring to what you do, and you clearly seem like a man who has more than 24 hours in the day, because you follow go-karts, you follow all the junior formula, all the reports. Very interesting. Maybe we can send you a report to for you to fill and tell us how you're enjoying this episode with us, Dr. Marko. But on on a more serious note, you spoke about pressure. And Scott Speed recently was on the Beyond the Grid podcast, the official F1 podcast, right? And he said that Red Bull literally put every element together in the team to help him succeed. And he was speaking very high volumes of, the whole process and the whole sort of backup support that Red Bull gives drivers to succeed, right? And I wanted to sort of dig a little further on that, because when it comes to pressure, what's your style of dealing with drivers? Do you sort of become a mentor and sort of a psychologist to help them? Like, how do you help drivers who are struggling? Like, how do you empathize with them? Do you sort of egg them on, saying, there you go, let's do it?
Let's come generally. Qualifying is so important. So on our simulator, I told them we must have the qualifying simulations. It's very important. They call it now the Helmut lab, which is just one lab. And before it had been 4 labs, which is not good enough. So, we are trying also from the simulation tools to make this pressure already aware, and you have to start with this. And then it's individual. Each driver is different, and individual discussions. There are discussions with the team owners and with both drivers. So this weekend I'm quite busy. I start on Thursday lunchtime with a lot of team principals of the lower category, so mainly F2, and with drivers, and we go through. But it's individual. It's not a system where you can say. Of course, the base is all the data. They all are on our simulator. They are on the simulator of the teams, which are individually, we try to coordinate that the teams are cooperating with Red Bull Racing. There's always they are worried that some information will go to the other, but that's not the case. It's just we're trying to achieve for everybody the best. And at the moment, it's far away from best. We are very successful. Every race is a podium with a Red Bull F2 driver. Unfortunately, it's never the same.
I'm sure you have a fantastic driver headache with the number of drivers you actually work with. But very interestingly, what makes you impatient with a driver? Let's also get to a little critical side of how you deal with things. But what makes you impatient with a driver?
Hacha has in Baku a car which was fast enough for winning, and he crashed twice. You can make a mistake, but you shouldn't make it twice. And that is something which is not acceptable. And now the pressure starts and Haja can't deliver what is theoretically possible or capable of. And you have to come out from such a situation is even more difficult because most of these drivers are young, so it's difficult for them. First of all, they have the pressure of performing, and then the pressure within the team, and then they have to say, okay, I made a stupid mistake, or I made it twice. And to get out of this psychological deep is it's not easy. We try to help, but and then it starts, oh, the engineer didn't do what I would like. The engineer said he didn't do what I told him. So all sort of accusations are starting, and you have to go back and say, listen, success, we need the stopwatch is what matters, and no arguments from, fortunately, the tires. But then it comes, yeah, maybe my tire set was not optimal. And so they're all looking for excuses. But in the end, it's a stopwatch.
Very interesting. You mentioned you work with a lot of young drivers. Clearly, it's the young driver program. There are lots of generational gaps between you and them. How do you end up? How tricky is it to connect with the drivers of this era?
In the end, it's a race car, and you have to drive it as quick as possible. And if sometimes I go to some corners and I don't need a stopwatch to see who is fast and who isn't. So, okay, what changed is a lot of more electronics, a lot of more control systems, and so on. But you see, for example, in the wet, a Verstappen, you see how much faster he is. You don't need a stopwatch for it. How smooth he is driving, and if he is sliding, he provocates a power slide, which is pleasure to watch. So in the end, driving is still what matters. Whatever technical support you have, in the end, it's your control of the throttle and the braking.
Okay, interesting. And I would assume I know a little bit about the business of a racing driver academy, given that ultimately there is somebody who funds it, and there is a way of how you help drivers grow through, and then how they all succeed through the system. Now we know that Red Bull, the energy drinks company, actually funds the Red Bull junior team or the academy, as you just said. Uh, on an average, what's the annual cost of running this exhaustive a program? You support drivers all the way from karting through to Formula One. What's an average cost of running a program like you do, Dr. Marko?
Uh, I can say you a fixed number. First of all, we are a prestigious sponsor. In general, we have competitive drivers. We pay on time. So our conditions are very good ones. And a lot of teams want to work with us. So the amount we pay to the team is varying. Secondly, it's different. Well, let's put it like that in average, we pay 50% of the costs a driver or we have to bring to the team. The negotiations most of the time are done by us, and as I mentioned, we have quite attractive conditions. But there are other systems when a driver has a lot of personal sponsors, then as long as the car is just to be recognized as a Red Bull car, we give him more space and we pay less. So it's varying. And if some driver is not so successful, we are not going to the 50%, we are offering less. So it's all depending on performance.
Interesting. Thank you. That was I was hoping I get a number, but I can understand you cannot share a number publicly. But coming to driver changes, something Red Bull has been known for. You could literally have a mid-season driver change at any point in the season, depending, of course, on performance and stuff. Now, who usually calls the shots when it comes to driver changes at Red Bull Racing and then at Alpha Tauri?
It was Mateschitz and me.
Okay, and now I presume it is you along with the new management, or
New
is it now?
management and the team principles are now also there established. It's a common decision. Yeah.
Do you and Christian Horner often disagree on driver decisions?
Uh, Not often, but sometimes we do. Yes.
Could I ask which was the last driver you all disagreed about?
The last one, I would say Nick de Vries, and he was at the moment it looks like he is right.
So, is it okay if I dig further? I presume Christian didn't want Nick de Vries, and you wanted him. Is that or is it the reverse?
I mean, basically it's Alpha Tauri, so it's not complete, but as we are a big family, I would say we at least getting opinions. And, and he was not so a fan of Nick de Vries.
And how close was Mick Schumacher back then in the conversation to get in the Alpha Tauri then?
Uh, there was Franz Tost who wanted Mick Schumacher, but Mick Schumacher was with Ferrari Academy through all his career, and he was already in F1, and basically Alpha Tauri is a junior team. And with Nick de Vries, the difference to Schumacher is he had just one race, a very successful race in Monza, so he could fit in our philosophy that it is a junior team.
Sure, understood. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, always something to talk about. But maybe now, Soumil, we can move on to the next part about Dr. Marko himself.
Oh yeah, I'm so intrigued to know more about the time where Red Bull bought Minardi, Dr. Marco, because at that point in time, you obviously had run a team. The idea was to develop a lot of drivers. So was it ever in the books that you could potentially run Minardi or later Toro Rosso? Was it ever discovered as well, discussed?
No, no, no. I'm not for the operating business. That's a team principle. I was more in the background. But, to know the whole background, at that time, FIA was run by Max Mosley, and they guaranteed us we can use the same chassis for both teams, which was the case in 2009, no, 2008, when Vettel won Monza. He had the Ferrari engine, which was stronger than the Red Bull team. I think it was a Renault engine at this time, which was less powerful than the Ferrari. So it was a commercially very good decision. With one development center, which was in Milton Keynes, we could run 4 cars. After winning Monza, the world changed, and all of a sudden, what was guaranteed to us didn't exist anymore. So we got the team, and now we had to set up a complete technical team, production, design, everything, because it was not anymore allowed to use the chassis of Red Bull Racing. So that changed dramatically, but once we had the team, the boss decided, yes, we keep going, but it changed the whole financial base of the decision why we bought Alpha Minardi.
You surely wouldn't have been very happy with it, right? And how did you find out that they were doing this against you? Because ideally, that's what you bought the team for, right? To run 4 cars. But suddenly you have at least $100 million more of money to spend. That's that's a hard one.
That's a hard one, and that shows a commitment and the passion which Red Bull had. Because, okay, as I said, we made the first step, now we do the second step. And now that's why Minardi or now Alpha Tauri will have a new setup with two new people on the front. It's Peter Bayer and Laurent Makis, and it's clear the team has and will follow as closely as the regulations allow it Red Bull Racing. Don't do their own development and own suspension and. So use as much of the brilliant technical know-how we have and make as much synergies as are possible.
No, I've been very intrigued to see. And is it really that the two teams are completely separate and that no information is shared at all? Because surely, right, most outsiders when they come to Formula One, they're like, hey, these are two teams owned by Red Bull. Surely they must be discussing things or parts of designs, but that's not legal. So does that not happen at all?
Not in the way that Alpha Tauri is successful enough. There was too much ego, which is part of the sport, and now that's clear for the future. And as far as the regulations allow it, the synergies will be used.
I want to, for a second, Dr. Marco, talk about the culture. We, a second ago, spoke about drivers and how you said you need to show the results and you need to perform and show the results on the stopwatch. And that's how you determine about young drivers. But where did that culture sort of form in your mind? Like, when did you come to that? And how does this whole perform and perish culture work with all the young drivers as well? Are everyone capable enough of taking it?
If I understand you correctly, we follow the performance of the team, the performance of the driver, and taking all that in account, and that is the base for a decision to continue or not to continue.
And recently, you've also onboarded lots of drivers from outside the system. Firstly, there was Alex Albon in, I think, 2019. Then we had Sergio Perez come back into the system as well. Do you notice any difference in the drivers and their ability or mindset from the drivers that, let's say, are in the Red Bull system itself?
We have again to come back a little bit. Albon was with us in the junior team for quite a while. He had a lot of crashes, and that's the reason why we didn't continue, but there was just the interruption, I would say. It was not completely new. He had long time support from us also in the go-kart area. So with Sergio Perez, we had how we call it, a selection day, I think in Estoril, where he was, I think, together with Ricardo or so. And we had a close look at him. And interestingly, on the qualifying lap, he was down, but in race performance, he was good. But at that time, he had already a lot of backing from his Mexican supporters, and they decided to go their own way. But it was an amicable decision. Yes, you have a different approach. You have a lot of funding, fortunately. So, but in the end, we came together again when the decision was between Albon and Perez. And with Alex, I have to say, Alex was really unlucky. In Brazil, he was fighting for second position when Hamilton turned him round. He got a fine, didn't help Alex, but he lost his podium. And the next, which was more severe, was in Austria when Alex was fighting for the win, when again he was turned round by Hamilton. And that hit his confidence massively, massively. You know, a second and the win was on the table, and through a driver error from someone took the glory away. And that made it difficult from this moment. His self confidence was down, and we needed someone we knew to fight for the championship. We need two solid drivers. But in the end, there was always some sort of connection with Red Bull already in the early days.
Actually, in these moments, I want to know more about what Dr. Marco, the person, thinks of. Because you, of course, were a racing driver in the past. Of course, a Le Mans winner with Porsche as well. Not many people talk about that, but you've done that and raced at the Targa Florio and other very, very important races. And for you, do you sort of step in their shoes sometimes and feel like, okay, I would have done something differently, or that's what I, as a racing driver, feel like about a certain moment or something like that?
We come back in the end, it's the same. I talked to Perez, who had some very good races once he won, but he had some not so good races. And for example, in his first stint, he was not aggressive enough. He was looking too much at the tires. So that had nothing to do with Tagaflorio. If you have some common sense, you see, and you don't need to look at the data where the race or the place for a podium was lost. And that's how you say, if you have this racing spirits and this passion, then it's you see it. Or I see it at least.
Well, on that front as well, Dr. Marco, I'm so interested because you spend so much of your time scouting young drivers, watching their races, reading the reports, talking to people. Does that ever leave you with any free time? Like, what do you do when or if you have any free time at all? Like, who is Dr. Marco outside of the racetrack?
Oh, I have quite a few other interests. I am collecting art, so if I have time, I go to galleries or I go in atelier in the workshop of artists. So that's one thing. The other thing is I have a forest and I work there, and there I get a lot of strength. When you're and of course I do the forest a little bit different. We nursing and we're doing far more work than most of them because I don't need the financial success. And there you have to think in 3 or 4 generations before the result will be obvious. So you have to think far ahead. So you have to have visions. And that there was, yeah, our boss was one of the best men ever I met about visions. He didn't think about next year. He was always 10, 20 years ahead, okay, and most of the time he was right. So, but with me, I have some other interests, of course, and I'm very well organized with my. I start quite early. It's known my phone calls are coming quite early in the morning, so I'm well organized. So we can achieve it. And I don't need so much sleep.
Wait, how much do you sleep normally, Dr. Marco? Eh, Still, roughly. Only 4 to 5. Wait, you must be having a fair bit of coffee then, right? Or something or the other to keep you going?
No, I have Red Bull.
Very well done, sir. Very well done. No, but it amazes me. So, how much can you accomplish in your day? Because you have, what, essentially 19 hours of things to do?
Yeah, and if I'm reading a lot of books, that's also part of my life. I watch sometimes TV, or when I wake up early at night, I watch some of the races, you know, afterwards, and still, yeah, no more, no other conclusion as I had on the race day, if I watch it again. It's no.
Do you and have you watched Drive to Survive? What's your feeling about Drive to Survive?
It's good for the sport, but it's not very interesting for me.
My word. And actually, on the subject of art, Dr. Marco, one question that I really wanted to ask. Did you ever draw yourself? Because I see a lovely painting in the back, and I get a feeling you have quite a simple taste in art, I see.
That is a present, and it's here, and it's not. But generally, I am in modern art. Most of it is Austrian based, but when I am in Shanghai, have time, there's a very nice old building where all the painters are. So it's not, let us say, only this period or this, and I buy out of the stomach what I like. I buy. But in the meanwhile, I think it's 1,500 paintings.
Wow, that's a lot. That's a lot of them. Why do you keep in store all of them?
Uh, I have 4 hotels and they are filled up with paintings. So some of the people say, I just open up another one to get some room for the paint. But that's also an approach. Some of them are quite expensive ones, but I want to have it public or semi-public. I don't want to store it somewhere in a, I don't know, basement or things like so in a warehouse. I want to see it, and when I walk around, it's memories, and it's a different world because it gives complete different impressions. But yeah, I'm looking always forward. And if you look at the painting, it's depending on the mood, on the light, it very often can give you a new impression.
And you spoke about paintings that sort of give you back some really fond memories. Is there any particular one that you love the most at the moment? Or are your paintings mostly racing related or just generally
No,
outside life
not
as
at
well?
all. Not at all. The racing paintings are mainly gifts, so it's some photographs or some, yes. But no, it's modern, proper modern art.
No, I love it. That's such a fun way to detach from the racing world as well. Quite like what one of your prodigies, Sebastian Vettel, does as well, because so many people love him for the same thing that he's able to detach away from racing. And I really, really wanted to ask you about him because Sebastian and Max, they've contributed to 79 of the 100 wins that Red Bull Racing has had. Two finds both made by you. Very, very, very top class drivers. But what do you see as the difference between the two of them, Dr. Marco? Because they're all different human beings, essentially, but also from a driving style perspective, how are they so different to each other?
First of all, they are different characters. Both were completely focused on racing, and they had an unbelievable talent. Maybe Max is more natural. Seb is going into the smallest detail. You know, to be an engineer with him was not a nice time because he, if you want something, he was looking and it. There was nothing what was, how should I say, by accident. Everything was clearly planned and also executed in this way. So, main difference, maybe Max does it more easy. It's more natural. But both are great drivers, no doubt. And yeah, Max has now more wins than Seb.
It's so amazing we're talking about this because back then it seemed like Seb was everything, wasn't he, Dr. Marco? You had one four-time champion, so many wins. And then in 2014, when he left, this what is it like to deal with an exit of a driver who's just done so much for you? How does the team react and adapt and sort of wrap around a high-profile driver? Because you mentioned Max motivates the team. I surely imagine it must have been the same for Seb as well. So how did you and the team sort of gel with that? And you then had Danny Kvyat and Daniel Ricciardo in 2015. Was that a big shift internally in the atmosphere?
You said what the driver has done for us, but I also would like to mention what we have done for the driver. Yeah, it's also an important point. But if you are a winning driver in Formula One, you must have a big ego. And at that time, our engine was not competitive. And it was clear that the engine wouldn't be competitive for the next couple of years. So it was understandable that he is looking for something where he can win again. And that's part of the business. So we sat down, I remember in Japan, he invited me for a nice restaurant. It was clear we were talking about renewing contract and there was no answer. I knew what was coming. And then he brought it forward. At least the dinner was nice when he saw the news. That's good.
But on that, do you often hang out with drivers outside of racing, like with Seb or with any other driver? Do you spend time with them when you're not at the racetracks as well?
Sometimes, yes, not too often, but because it's so busy. But if the opportunity is right, and if we sit down, we have a lot of fun. I remember once it was Ricciardo, Max, and I think Carlos Sainz. And when we were sitting in my home and the accordion player and some Styrian schnapps, so it was a nice atmosphere. But it's not too often.
Do you find it easy to gel with the younger generation? Are they just about as relaxed and more conversationally as you are as well?
As I say, they are different, and of course, some stuff I always Max his sim racing is something which I can't follow or understand, but it's him, it's part of his life, so okay, but I don't talk about that with him. And also the negotiations about his team, the cooperation with Red Bull, that's not my business. I just can't follow it, or I'm not interested. But the rest, they are modern people, and a lot of things we discuss, and we have also some fun. But it's not that we are everything has to be in.
Yeah. Very interesting fact. So a lot of Max's sim racing, Soumil has actually commentated on. Okay, so good connections there as well with Max. I'm sure you are glad that Max do all the racing in the sim, but you're not driving an old Red Bull in Nordschleife in September. That was a big story that came into Canada, and I totally understand where it comes from. After what happened to Robert Kubica, everyone's a little more skeptical of such, adventures.
You know, it's basically a show run, so you don't have the time to set up the car. Nürburgring Nordschleife is something really special. You have bumps, you're jumping, and. So with a car which is not specially done for it, and I know Max, he says he doesn't care about records. He knows the record by the second, and if he's driving there, he's not going only to beat it, he wants to beat it in a big way. And as I mentioned, with a car which is not prepared for that, it's a high risk. And that is really not necessary to take. And you can agree, and he would say, no, I won't. I know him. As soon as in the car, he would go for it.
This reminds me of Nico Hulkenberg was the ambassador of the Force India Driver Academy. So he had come down to India. He was working with the younger drivers. And there was a twin-seater go-kart that he and Paul de Resta had to sit in, right? And Paul de Resta stepped out and asked first thing, are you sure we can sit in this? Have you gotten all the permissions all the way from Otmar to Vijay Mallya to make sure I sit in the car? So I totally, understand your reservations as well. But talking of Vettel, Dr. Marco, there are also these rumors that Sebastian Vettel could be your successor in the whole Red Bull Junior Driver program, right? Do you have any thoughts on that? Like, does Vettel have the skills to do what you do in the
Yeah,
academy?
I mean, if it wouldn't be only the Red Bull Junior program, it's far more what I'm doing. But I think the whole thing was mentioned some on a TV interview. Someone brought it up. I said, Seb, you would earn much less, you would have to work far more, and you would have the same sort of traveling. That's the reason, at least you said in the public, why you are stopping. Though at the moment, I think there's nothing concrete. It's just if he wants make up his mind what he wants to do in the future. Of course, with his knowledge and with approach, he could be a very good choice. But at the moment, there's nothing real.
Fingers crossed. I'd love to see your succession planning for the academy. Just as when we told our listener base, and we should wrap up in the next 5 minutes if that's okay, Dr. Marco. Uh, Yeah, only 5 minutes. Yes. When we asked our listener base, what's the one question you'd love to ask Dr. Marco? We got over 300 responses. Okay. One of the common threads that actually came in was, of course, driver talk. Few people have been reacting to how detached Max can also be, saying, "I'm winning everything, but I'm not going to be here forever." If Max was to decide to do what Nico Rosberg did, win at the end of the year and go, how would you deal with that situation? Of course, it's hypothetical, but I'd just love to know how you would think about it.
I'm aware of it. He won't go forever, but I hope that he doesn't do it like Nico and just saying after a party or so, he will give us some warning at least so we can react on it. But I'm aware that he will come. He won't stop racing completely. I think Le Mans and things like that, where he's just going to have fun and enjoy it. He will still do this sort of racing, but you can't underestimate the pressure nowadays. Formula One with 22, 23 races every week on the simulator, a lot of PR activities. So it's hard work and it's a lot of stress and understandable, but I don't know when. So I hope at least he fulfills his contract.
And in the whole succession planning, there is Daniel Ricciardo, multiple times race winner, very happy to be back. He said he's happy to come back to Alpha Tauri. You have Checo Perez, who's clearly the last three races have been sort of not so good from a Checo standpoint. Do you think that there is any chance whatsoever that Daniel could actually get a look in 24?
First of all, Jacko is still second in the championship, so and the first goal is to defend his position. And I'm sure if he's focusing on just achieving good results, that he will be, yeah, a good, value driver to Red Bull Racing. With Ricciardo, he will have a test in Silverstone, and from there we see where he is standing. But that is nothing for immediately. We have a contract with Jacob which goes till the end of 24. And of course we have to think what will happen after that. And yeah, if Ricciardo recovers, if it is the old Ricciardo which we knew, which was a very competitive driver, I don't exactly know what happened at Renault and at McLaren, especially why he lost the edge. But of course, we have to evaluate it. But nothing for the straight away.
Sure. Yeah. So you're saying it may not be Red Bull, but Ricardo could have a seat in at Alpha Tauri, depending how everybody's season, Yuki and Nick's seasons sort of progress at Alpha Tauri in 23.
Oh, I say he has a test in Silverstone with a Red Bull Racing car. And of course, we will look at this test, how the test is, and yeah, then we see and discuss.
Now, Dr. Marko, we've talked about so many things that you have to make a decision on, but I would like to end on the trickiest question for you. If you had to pick a book to recommend for all of our listeners to read, and I know you've read so many of them, which one would you recommend actually? I suspect that this has to be the hardest question that's come about today.
I don't read books about racing. So you mean generally a book?
Generally as well, yeah, yeah.
I don't know the English title, Der
See,
Mann ohne Eigenschaft.
I told you it must be the hardest question for today.
There are so many good, but yeah, I would say Der Mann ohne Eigenschaften von Musil.
And what about it do you feel is so special for you personally?
It's The fight to succeed in life. That's too complicated in English, sorry.
No worries, no worries. I'm sure we can find a translated copy and check it out as well. But Dr. Marco, thank you for your time on the Inside Line F1 podcast. It's been such a pleasure to have you on and to discuss so many things as well. So hope you had fun.
Good, thanks, bye bye.
Have a lovely day. Bye bye.